talking about Riyad Mahrez, the Leicester City player, who didn't get his multi-million-pound move to Manchester City before the transfer deadline and has stayed at Leicester City. The only problem is he ain't turning up for work and he's not playing for the football club. And Leicester City fans, I would think, are beginning to get a bit impatient. Where is he? Mahrez, we are led to believe, is in a, quotes, fragile frame of mind. And he could well be, and we have to respect that. But what's going to give? Because this has become a standoff. A lot of people getting in touch with Simon, Jordan, Bob Mills, myself, Jim White this morning. You can too. 08717 223344. Now, Simon, you have said, obviously, as a former owner, Leicester are quite right to hit him as hard as they like in the pocket. But what's going to happen now? What can take it forward? Will the PFA mediate in this, as many believe they should? Gordon Taylor of the PFA joins us live this morning. Gordon, good morning.
Good morning, Jim. Morning, Simon and Bob.
Morning.
Good morning, Gordon. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, I put it out there that it's now likely that you will mediate in this. Maybe I put the cart before the horse, but am I right to assume that? Are you going to be getting involved?
We've been involved in other such situations, Jim. You remember Peter Adam Wingy and Luis Suarez was perhaps the biggest when there was a misinterpretation of a clause in his contract when he wanted to get to Barcelona, and we managed to deal with that, and in the end it worked out well both for the club and for Luis. In this situation, similarly, we offered our services last week to the club to try and help resolve it, and I was just told back they were just hoping that, you know, with the passage of time it could be resolved, but I've not heard anything back from them since. So we are ready to act if we are called in.
So what will you do as and when you are called in?
Well, basically, we've got to reconcile a difficult situation. It's public knowledge about Manchester City wanting to take him, about the fee being asked by Leicester, but it was getting very close to the actual end of the deadline, as you know, when it all gets very frantic.
Yeah.
As a result, it didn't take place, and then there's a fallout. Makes it a little bit difficult, to say the least, and you can see the problems with both sides. But at the end of the day, as a footballer, he needs to play, and with regard to his future, that's something you can discuss with the two sides and try to get a compromise solution.
I mean, with the greatest of respect here, Gordon, can you really make a difference? Because has the PFA...
I don't claim we can make a difference. I'm only saying in the past we have made a difference, and we've been called in to mediate, understanding the situation from both sides. We can only do our best, and I just feel it needs somebody perhaps coming in from outside to deal with it.
Yeah.
But Gordon, I mean, Simon Jordan, do you mean you are there to represent the player predominantly because he's part of your union? How do you come into a solution? The first question I have, Gordon, is what is your standpoint on the player's conduct? Irrespective of whether Leicester City have agreed a fee with Manchester City or not, the player's employed by Leicester and engaged in a contract with Leicester for 2.5 years. What's the PFA starting point in regards to their members' behaviour?
The starting point, or the finishing point, is about playing football on the field of play. We know the problems with clubs who are interested in players and then get in touch with players through their agents and can unsettle them. You know that full well, the way the game works.
That's not the question, Gordon. I'm asking you what your starting point is with your player's approach to the situation. He hasn't got what he's wanted, and the culture of the player is doing something.
Okay, well, if you give me a chance to speak, he's a human being, he's a footballer, he's a top quality player, and you can see how this matter is resolved, and that's why we're looking, if needed, to try and resolve the situation.
Would you concede, Gordon, would you concede Mahrez is in the wrong here?
I wouldn't. You can't get a solution by telling people who's in the wrong. You can see what's happened on both sides, and I'm talking about a solution to get the player playing again and to get him in the right frame of mind for the benefit of both the club and the player.
But Gordon, haven't you got to start from a start point of not necessarily blame attribution? And I understand your position of being diplomatic in this conversation, but you've come on to have a frank exchange of views, otherwise not to promote the PFA and how well they do their job. The idea that the player is under contract to Leicester, and he has an obligation to Leicester, and there can't be, irrespective of Man City are bidding for this player and he wants to go there can't be any mitigation for your player or a member of your union wanting to go on strike. Is your position that there is mitigation for that?
Of course it is. There's a situation where players can be upset. There's situations where clubs can... Well, let me put it back to you the other way, Simon. Where a club suddenly wants the player to go, he's quite happy to stay, and suddenly he's made to train with the juniors.
Yeah, but you don't allow that anymore, Gordon. That's not allowed anymore. That sort of conduct is not really allowed anymore, Gordon, and well you know it.
Look, there's conduct and conduct. What is allowed, what isn't allowed, it's about practicalities, Simon. And from that point of view, of course, if he's not in at the club, he won't be paid. But he's a top-quality footballer. He's done a great job for Leicester. And obviously he's been unsettled by approaches.
If he's a top-quality footballer, Gordon, then if he's a top-quality footballer, surely what goes with the currency of being a top-quality footballer is having a top-quality psychological approach to the obligations that he has. How can you say that is the fact that he's a top-quality footballer is mitigation for doing something which is fundamentally wrong? What he didn't get was what he wanted. If you're saying in any shape or form that is a culture that should be embraced, I despair of you, Gordon.
I'm not saying it's a culture that can be embraced. I'm saying it's what happens. It's reality. You've seen what's happened recently with Liverpool, where their top player carries out his contract, then he gets his wish to move. The game is all about dealing with players and clubs dealing with it in a practical manner. And from that point of view, that's why I believe we could resolve this situation.
Gordon, not that I'm saying this is what you should do, but should your starting point, as Simon is maybe indicating, should it not be, right, Riyad, go back to Leicester and start training with the club again, and then we will involve ourselves here at the PFA. But first things first, you've got to go back.
First things first is you need to speak to both sides, fully understand the situation with a view to working out how it can be resolved. All I will say is footballers want to play, and at the moment that's not the situation, and we would want to resolve that.
I mean, in the past, when you look back, Simon, Gordon, I mentioned that Pierre Van Hooijdonk years ago. You recall that in the late 90s at Forest. He went on strike because they didn't strengthen in the way that he thought they were going to, allegedly, at the football club. And Dave Bassett got very strong in it. Van Hooijdonk went back to Holland, came back, had to get a police escort to go back to training. Such was the feeling of, real disapproval amongst the fans as to what he'd done. And Van Hooijdonk said later, well, I could have handled it differently. I must admit, I could have handled it differently. Well, we see, this is deja vu here, isn't it, with Mahrez?
Well, of course, there's the opinion of supporters and the club and his fellow teammates. It's happened before, it will happen again. I hope it doesn't happen too often. But it is a human being situation, it's human relationships, and all I'm saying is I believe that I'm not saying we can resolve it, I'm just saying it's an unsatisfactory situation. We have achieved success in the past with such situations, and we would try again to do our best.
So just to recap then, Gordon, you're waiting really for the word to get involved and then mediate, or you've had that invitation and you will get involved?
No, we've offered to get involved, and if we
Welcome to Now TV, the streaming service where you can pick and choose from our 4 monthly passes. How can we help?
I'm having a sleepover. Could you suggest some movies?
Here's over 1,000 to get your teeth into.
I've been away. Give me all the shows I've missed. Over.
Here's 250 box sets. Over. Pick the passes that are perfect for you and stream what you want each month with Now TV.
are asked, and that's agreed by both parties, we will be there straight away.
Gordon, can I just get the start point, because you haven't answered the question, and I know that it's a difficult question for you to want to answer, but you're on air and you've come on board to answer your point. Can you not see that a player not getting what he wanted getting what he wanted, and downing tools is fundamentally and irrevocably wrong. Now, the idea that this is a cultural thing, that he's a footballer, it's of human interest, we all have to deal with adversity. We all have to deal with a situation where we can't get what we want. Surely the start point has to be to accept that Riyad Mahrez is an employee of Leicester City, and within a given reason under a contract that he signed of sound body and mind, he has to do what the club wants. And if they don't want to sell him, he has to get on with it. Surely that has to be the PFA's position if they're doing what's right for the well-being of footballers per se, rather than engaging in supporting prima donnas doing exactly what they want to do when they want to do it, and unwinding the whole fabric of football.
Well, you're making a lot of points and talking about, you're being very disrespectful as well.
No, I'm not.
Of the player when you don't know the whole background to it.
And neither do you, Gordon, either. And neither do you, Gordon, but you're coming out straight away in defence.
Please, we're not in a court of law here. I'm saying there's a difficult situation that we're hoping that if we were called in, we could resolve. We've been in such similar situations before, and we've hoped to resolve them, and we're available again.
Yeah, I've had you involved, Gordon. I've had you involved, so I know exactly what your involvement involves.
Well, go on. When have we been involved?
You were involved, Gordon, when you came down. You were involved, Gordon, when I had the Latvian international goalkeeper Alexander Kalinko, who had an altercation with Trevor Francis, and your involvement was actually more inflammatory and was involving me paying the player up rather than dealing with the situation. So I'm afraid, Gordon, we'll have to agree to disagree on most of the things that you at the PFA do. Great respect with Bobby Barnes, but a lot of what you do at the PFA is fundamentally flawed, I'm afraid.
Well, you can have your own opinion, but I would disagree with that. Well, you don't have to thank me.
Well, for allowing me to have my own opinion. Thank you, Gordon. Yeah.
You can have your opinion. I'll have mine, and I think you are wrong, and I think I'm right.
Gordon, listen, thanks for coming on. Gordon Taylor of the PFA. Obviously a bit of history between yourself and Gordon Taylor, there emerging Simon. But Simon, you're right to have your say, and Gordon Taylor is right to come on and
absolutely
and say what he thinks from a PFA standpoint.
And respect from the point of view of the fact that Gordon Taylor has a job to do. The Players' Union had a place once upon a time. You asked the bulk of players and top players, and I can name lots of them, their regard for what the PF actually do for mental health and the things that they could do for the enormous amount of money that they get generated from the TV deals that pay them. Mate, I'm sorry, I could go on and on here.
I think there's a bit of history between you and Gordon Taylor, there, Simon, to be fair, though, and you were determined to bring that up, weren't you? No matter what, you were going to bring that up.
Well, I also, I've got a lot of respect for the PFA. I think Bobby Barnes is a brilliant chief executive.
All right. The situation is this, though. The standpoint, as far as I gather, continues between Leicester and Mahrez. How is it going to be resolved? Gordon Taylor's waiting to get involved. Simon Jordan's not having it, though. Stay with us.
Tell me now, only thing that's